Era+Family background+Favorite wife+Rough man+Getting rich, a modern female medical doctor was hit by a car accident into the 1970s. Did greasy men still take advantage of the beginning? Wangshu lifted his foot and broke the scumbag son general. Turning around, I realized that my rough husband was actually a big shot worshipped by modern people. Showdown. Stop pretending. Wangshu is determined to hold on to his thighs tightly. If your health is not good, take your husband to see a doctor. If your family is not wealthy, work hard to make money and pursue a career. Wangshu always felt that he couldn't do without the care of his rough husband, but she didn't know that countless times late at night, the cold and domineering man nestled in her arms, rubbing against her. It's great to stick with my wife, keywords of the novel. After getting married to the toughest and roughest man in the village, I became rich through the supermarket without any pop-ups. After getting married to the toughest and roughest man in the village, I became rich through the supermarket. Download the complete collection of TXT from the supermarket. After getting married to the toughest and roughest man in the village, I became rich through the supermarket. Read the latest chapter. Chapter 1. Where is this? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Where is this? Lighter. The air is scorching hot, and the body is about to melt. Wangshu is like a flat boat, controlled by someone's direction, but shattered by the rushing current. Suddenly, I heard a low and hoarse smile, and then I saw a handsome face with soared eyebrows and stars. My solid chest leaned down, and the imprint spread down from my neck. It's too hot. Wangshu's eyes were dazed, but an anxious voice rang out. Xiaoye. Where are you in pain? Her shoulder was suddenly lightly tapped, and she suddenly woke up to see her colleague looking at her with a worried face. Why is your face so red? Isn't it a fever? I've had 5 surgeries in a row, who can handle it? Don't sleep in the office, hurry back. She is a female medical doctor with a single mother and fetus who has never even touched a man's hand. Surprisingly, she was awakened by a colleague while having that shameful dream in the hospital office. Wangshu quickly grabbed his bag and said, "Okay, then I'll go back and rest." "Thank you, Teacher Zheng." She is only 26 years old this year and graduated with a PhD from a world-renowned medical school. She is one of the most cutting-edge talents in this leading hospital in China, and her seniors and juniors have praised her greatly. Fortunately, she did not say any more explicit nonsense and was not discovered. She didn't even dare to look up, grabbed her bag and hurriedly walked out of the hospital, only to suddenly hear a piercing brake sound in her ear. With a loud bang, her eyes turned red and she suddenly lost consciousness. Consciousness returned once again, and she only felt a hot body pressing against her, groping. Shouldn't you be having a spring dream again? Shoo, as long as we cook raw rice and mature rice, even if Zhou Jinsong doesn't want to leave you, he can only pinch his nose and help us. Don't you also like me? Anyway, sooner or later you will be my person. What's so embarrassing? A greasy and lewd voice rang in Wangshu's ear, causing him to suddenly come to his senses. When he opened his eyes, he saw a thin and short-looking man wearing a white shirt pressing against him, with a lewd smile on his face. She instinctively slapped her in the face. The man was obviously stunned by her beating, covering his face and staring for a moment, with a fierce expression in his eyes. Wangshu, you're already lying in my bed. How dare you pretend to be a chaste heroine with me? I have to deal with you today. He rushed forward and was about to tear off Wangshu's clothes. Wangshu learned Taekwondo from a young age and can fight 3 or 5 normal adult males without hesitation, not to mention such a thin dog. She pinched the man's wrist and pulled it downwards, and the sound of broken bones echoed in the pitch-black room. Playing hooligans is still reasonable. Today, I'll give you a long memory, auntie. She hit the man's abdomen with one knee and kicked him unconscious before groping out to report to the police. But what kind of place is this? It's dark and dark. Did she be abducted and sold to the countryside? But she clearly remembers that when she left the hospital, she seemed to have been hit by a large truck. She walked out of the small dilapidated courtyard with a brick wall in confusion, only to find that there were no streetlights outside, and even the road was a bumpy winding path. Where is this? She shook around and didn't even notice anyone. Suddenly, she felt a little flustered and instinctively wanted to reach out for her phone to call 110, but she felt empty. Taking a closer look under the moonlight above her head, she realized that she was wearing an old-fashioned floral shirt, earthy blue pants on her lower body, and a pair of release shoes on her feet. There was a lot of dirt. What the hell? Wangshu, have you ever thought about these days? A hoarse and deep voice came from his ear, and Wangshu was startled. He accidentally stepped on a protruding stone, and a piercing pain came from his feet. She hissed and fell to the ground, only to see a tall man standing behind her, resembling an iron tower. Seeing her fall, he instinctively stepped forward to pick her up, but seeing her slightly messy shirt, the man's eyes suddenly turned cold. Where did you go? The jaw was suddenly pinched, and Wangshu finally saw the man's face clearly. The man in front of him has wheat-colored skin, a handsome face as sharp as a knife, an axe, and a pair of sword eyebrows with sharp and dark eagle eyes. His facial features are clearly defined and sharp and handsome, coupled with his guaranteed height of 1.9 meters. He is a typical tough and handsome guy. The most important thing is that he seems to look exactly like the man in her dream. Wangshu's face turned red as he rubbed against it. You. She was about to question who the man was, but suddenly a series of memories came to her mind that did not belong to her. Wangshu was taken aback. She actually traveled across. The original owner had the same name as her and was a rural educated youth from Rome province. The tall man in front of her was named Zhou Jinsong, her husband who had been engaged since childhood and had already obtained a certificate. The Zhou family and the Yi family are old friends. At that time, the original owner's parents were worried about the original owner going to the countryside to suffer, so they made several attempts to send her to the Xianyang Brigade where Zhou Jinsong's family was located, hoping that the Zhou family could take care of the original owner more. However, the original owner did not like Zhou Jinsong, a rough person in the army, and instead had a heated relationship with a high school student named Li Jianxiang in the village. Zhou Jinsong had a shoulder injury this time and came back to recuperate. Seeing the original owner like this, he decided to directly pull her to obtain a certificate. However, the original owner was thinking about Li Jianxiang in his heart and actually ran to his house on his wedding night, intending to elope with him. That person surnamed Li is not a good thing either. She usually eats from the original owner and uses the original owner's food. She was thinking about bringing him with her when the original owner tried to return to the city. When she saw the original owner running away from marriage, she wanted to directly cook mature rice with the original owner. Fortunately, she came over and deposed that hooligan. No, not right. Zhou Jinsong. Isn't that the great philanthropist she saw in the book before? Her school has a Jinsong building. When he was young, he became disabled due to a task and was forced to divorce by his wife who despised him. He then went to sea to start a business and had no children in his life. He passed away before the age of 40. So, she traveled through time and became his idol's ex-wife. What am I? I didn't scold enough at home just now, and I still want to embarrass myself outside. A hint of anger flashed on the handsome face of the man. Wangshu, you are now my daughter. Law. You still remember Li Jianxiang's little white face in your heart, right? Believe it or not, I'll just send him in. Wangshu's jaw was pinched by him and he couldn't help but take a cold breath. Please be gentle. Listening to the soft voice, Zhou Jinsong unconsciously let go. Wangshu was pitifully limp on the ground, looking at the handsome face in front of him. Thinking about Li Jianxiang, who was a lewd man, he had some doubts about the original owner's judgment. She bit her lips and stared at Zhou Jinsong, saying, I just got angry and came out for a walk, but I couldn't find my way. I didn't go anywhere. Zhou Jinsong's lips were tight, and he lowered his body for a long time without saying a word. Yi Wangshu looked at him in confusion and said, What are you doing? Come up. The man couldn't bear to say, didn't he fall? Can he still walk? Yi Wangshu pursed his lips and said, Your shoulders are not. The man snorted, I'm not a girl, I'm not that delicate. Seeing that Yi Wangshu had been motionless for a long time, he relaxed his long arm and directly picked up Yi Wangshu and placed him on his back. The man's body exuded a faint fragrance of grass and wood, with a refreshing and pleasant smell that made Yi Wangshu's face turn red. She was worried that her struggle would hurt him, so she could only obediently let him carry her back home. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Scared Out. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Scared Out. After arriving home, Zhou Jinsong directly placed her on the bed, looked at her sweaty face, walked to the enamel basin with the word happiness printed on it, twisted a handkerchief with one hand, covered her face with a towel, and began to help her wipe her face. The water on the handkerchief didn't wring out much, and Yi Wangshu almost didn't suffocate, instinctively pushing his hand away. Zhou Jinsong's face turned black again. What? You don't like me touching you so much? His deep voice was clearly enveloped in coldness, and his dark eyes were fixed on Yi Wangshu, saying, You just love that little white face so much. Are you still so wary of me when you get married? Yi Wangshu felt uneasy as he stared at her and spoke weakly, No, I hurt. She bit her lip and explained. I have nothing to do with that Li Jinxiang. He can't pick up the garbage on one shoulder and can't carry it on the other hand. How can you compare with him? Can I miss being as sisters with him? When Zhou Jinsong heard her say this, he couldn't help but snort, but the coldness in his eyes faded slightly. You can see the part of Yi Wangshu's fair and small face that has been rubbed red, and her face suddenly becomes a bit stiff. He's already very light, why is this girl so tender that she turns red at a touch? Did the porcelain doll transform? He was in a dilemma holding a handkerchief, unsure of how to use his strength to wipe it for her. However, Yi Wangshu took the handkerchief and wring it dry, wiping his face clean, then washed it again and helped him wipe his hands. Feeling the soft little hand rubbing against his palm through the handkerchief, Zhou Jinsong's Adam's apple rolled and his straight body unconsciously bent. He went out with a cold face and poured another basin of water. He took off Yi Wangshu's shoes and socks and put them into the basin, deliberately using light force to rub her ankles. The tingling sensation on the soles of his feet made Yi Wangshu's scalp tingle, and his lips were even more sensitive to bite marks. After taking a shower, she quickly tucked into the blanket, her heart beating like thunder. What? Can I eat you? Upon seeing this, Zhou Jinsong's face, which happened to be slightly gloomy, sneered as he went out to wash up and lay back in bed. Yi Wangshu's heart was beating rapidly, feeling his scorching body temperature. Unconsciously, he remembered that spring dream and instinctively shrank back. Don't guard me like a wolf. If you don't want to, I won't touch you. Zhou Jinsong spoke coldly, a married couple who doesn't sleep under a blanket would be embarrassing to talk about. Don't chew your tongue in front of my mother. If you really don't want to talk to me, you can write a letter to your parents yourself. Yi Wangshu also knew from his tone that he had feelings for the relationship between the original owner and Li Jinxiang. She couldn't help but pull his finger and spoke softly, I'm not unhappy, I'm just a bit unprepared. To be fair, she quite likes Zhou Jinsong's style. She knew the original owner had some problems with that scumbag, and just helped her wash her face and feet. Zhou Jinsong looked at her rosy little face and felt a dry mouth and tongue. He always felt that this woman had changed a lot after going out. She used to be easygoing to him, but now she is so delicate and soft that she explains things to him well, making him feel like his heart is about to melt and he can't even bear to blame her. After a long time, he flipped over and spoke calmly, "Go to sleep." Wangshu obediently closed her eyes. I thought someone around her would make her sleep very restless, but I didn't expect the scent of mixed male hormones on Zhou Jinsong's body to be particularly helpful. Soon after getting wet on the pillow, she fell asleep. Having no dreams all night, when I woke up again, the sky was already bright and Zhou Jinsong beside me was nowhere to be found. She put on her clothes and walked out of the house, only to see Zhou Jinsong and Zhou's mother busy in the kitchen. Upon hearing the commotion, the man turned around and said indifferently, "When you wake up, sit on the table. It's too early for a while." Wangshu was too embarrassed to sit down and was about to step forward to help when he suddenly heard a strange and sinister voice coming from him. "Oh, can you count it?" A woman dressed in blue cloth walked out and glanced at Wangshu with a sour gaze. "You are really lucky, Wangshu. There are so many sister.in.law and daughter.in.law in these 10 miles and 8 towns, none of whom sleep until dawn and have their own men make breakfast and bring it to eat in front of them. This is Li Xiaoxia, the wife of Zhou Jinsong's eldest brother, who has been very hostile to the original owner since he went to the countryside. Wangshu is an experienced 5G surfer, can't you hear her intentionally being harsh on herself?" On the side, Zhou's mother opened her mouth and hesitated to speak. She didn't know how to reconcile her two daughter.in.law and could only look at Li Xiaoxia and say, "Xiaoxia, please speak a few words less." Li Xiaoxia, however, remained steadfast and said, "Originally, I haven't seen a new daughter.in.law from any family who can't sleep up until dawn and needs to be taken care of by her husband's family. Isn't that right? No one else has the same luck as me." Wangshu smiled at Li Xiaoxia, picked up a towel, and walked into the kitchen to wipe Zhou Jinsong's sweat affectionately. "Yes, my parents say the Zhou family is a good family, and Jinsong is also capable and loves his wife. Being able to marry such a husband may be difficult for many girls to ask for." She had a faint provocation in her eyes, which made Li Xiaoxia furious. The young uncle is really good-looking and has made great achievements at a young age. He must have a future ahead of him. He still loves his wife so much. Compared to her husband Zhou Jinrui, who is a broken worker, he is like a sky and a earth. She snorted coldly and said, "I don't know who's not clear with Li Jianxiang, even using his own money to subsidize him." Upon hearing these words, Zhou Jinsong's face suddenly turned cold, and his dark eyes stared closely at Wangshu. Wangshu looked calm and said, "I just thought he was pitiful before and wanted to help each other. What kind of unclear relationship could there be? You are Jinsong's sister.in.law, why do you rush to speak ill of your sister.in.law and give face to your uncle?" She affectionately hugged Zhou Jinsong's arm and said, "With a man like Jinsong, can I take a liking to a short and poor little white face?" Upon hearing her say this, Zhou Jinsong's lips curved involuntarily, and a pair of eagle eyes looked coldly at Li Xiaoxia, saying, "Sister-in-law, don't say anything like this next time." Li Xiaoxia didn't expect Zhou Jinsong to be coaxed like this by her, and couldn't help but clench her fist. Zhou Jinsong reluctantly pulled his hand out of her arms, took the towel from her hand, and hung it around his neck. He hoarsely said, "Go sit in the hall, don't burn you." Wangshu gave him a sweet smile and said, "I'll help you. You're injured, it's inconvenient." She took the bowl in his hand to hold congee. Li Xiaoxia gritted her teeth as she watched from the side. This fox spirit doesn't know how to captivate the second one. Even though they knew she was not clear about her collusion with that educated youth, they still had to pull her to obtain a certificate, and now they were being coaxed by her in just a few words. Watching Wangshu take a handkerchief and put a porridge bowl on it and walk carefully to the hall, Li Xiaoxia turned her eyes and pretended to be attentive. "Wangshu, let me come." She moves forward to take the bowl from Wangshu. She is tough. After grabbing the bowl, she suddenly screams and pretends to accidentally throw the hot bowl of congee on Wangshu's face. Wangshu's reaction was extremely fast. Instinctively, he reached out to pinch the Hoshi acupoint on her hand and dodged sideways, pretending to be panicked and hiding behind Zhou Jinsong. Li Xiaoxia felt that her hand suddenly lost control. The bowl of hot congee hit her new plastic sandals, which made her cry and fall to the ground. My feet. It hurts. Yi Wangshu grabbed Zhou Jinsong by the corner of her clothes and stared at her with tears in his eyes. Sister-in-law, I'll just handle it myself. This bowl is so hot, you can grab it with your bare hands. It hurts so much from the burn. Her pitiful and delicate appearance immediately frightened her. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Has a good show to watch. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 has a good show to watch. Zhou Jinsong's eyebrows twitched and he turned to look at his delicate little wife. Are you okay? Yi Wangshu bit his lips and shook his head. It's okay, it's just that you're scared. It's all my fault. I wish my sister-in-law could be more careful. Zhou's mother quickly went into the house to find clam oil for her eldest daughter-in-law. Li Xiaoxia didn't realize that the abnormality in her wrist just now was related to Yi Wangshu, so she accidentally bit her teeth and glared at Yi Wangshu, limping in to apply the medicine. Zhou Jinsong frowned and patted her head as she watched the commotion over there, saying, "Let's go eat first." Yi Wangshu is well behaved. The two men sat at the table. Zhou Jinsong handed her a boiled egg. Some clumsy people took a spoon in their left hand and fed congee to her mouth. Watching his awkward appearance, Yi Wangshu finally remembered that Zhou Jinsong had come back with a shoulder injury. She asked cautiously, "Your shoulder is so badly injured, you need to go to the hospital." In her past life, Zhou Jinsong was disabled due to a shoulder injury that was not treated in time. In this life, she cannot let the hero be disabled again. Zhou Jinsong stuffed a spoon into his mouth and spoke vaguely, "The old man is so delicate. Why go to the hospital with such a slight injury? It's a waste of money." Yi Wangshu looked at his misaligned and deformed shoulder with a serious expression and said, "No, you have to go today. Your bones are severely misaligned, and if left untreated, you will really become disabled." She could actually treat his injuries, but she couldn't fully confirm the situation based solely on visual inspection, so she decided to go to the hospital. Zhou Jinsong squinted his eyes and looked at her, then suddenly said with a smile on his face, "Why, would you still worry about me being disabled?" Yi Wangshu blushed at his words and instinctively retorted, "You disabled me and I still have to serve you." To Jinsong's slightly mischievous eyes last week, her voice became lower and lower. She lowered her heart and said loudly, "No, you have to go to the hospital anyway." Zhou Jinsong felt inexplicably like a stuffed bunny when he saw her like this. As he was about to speak, Li Xiaoxia hobbled to the dining table and said, "My younger brother and daughter-in-law really hurt men. It's just that there's no money in this family. Some people use all their own money to support outsiders, and when it's time to use it, they can't take it out at all." She smiled faintly and said, "My second brother's money, but I'll give you all the money to buy the radio and bicycle you need. Is it difficult for our family to pay for this money?" Zhou Jinsong couldn't help but frown and spoke softly, "Excuse me, sister-in-law, I don't need to go to the hospital." He patted Yi Wangshu's hand comfortingly and said, after finishing, "Go back to the house and stay." Yi Wangshu's mouth twitched. "It's really not possible, just sell the radio." She returned to her room, intending to see how the radio was in good condition, but unexpectedly, when she picked it up, her wrist was scratched by the glass on the table. She instinctively wanted to wipe off the blood, but felt a hard object in her pocket. When she took it out, it turned out to be a Buddha card. It seems that after she had surgery on an old lady who runs a supermarket, they insisted on giving her food, claiming it was safe. How did this thing come along? At the moment when blood droplets fell on the Buddha plaque, the scene in front of her suddenly changed, and a large supermarket appeared in front of her. There were rows of shelves, fruits, snacks, and appliances in the supermarket, which almost made Wangshu think he had put them back on himself. The outside of the supermarket was pitch black, and Wangshu tentatively opened the drawer of the cash register, which contained piles of Chinese yuan. This money won't be useful in this era. Wangshu was a bit frustrated, holding the money and looking around, thinking about how to get out now. The scene changed again, and she returned to her room. And the 100 yuan bill in hand turned into 10 Great Unity bills. Does it also come with currency conversion? Wangshu rubbed his eyes, convinced that the money was real, and his heart was filled with joy. She ran back to the main room with the money and raised the small stack of big Unity in her hand, saying, "Here, my parents sent it to me before, and I didn't have time to spend it. It's enough to show Jin Song the wound." Li Xiaoxia looked at the pile of money, her face full of disbelief. Although the Yi family is a dual employee, they definitely don't lack money, but sending so much directly to their daughter is also too much money. Zhou Jinsong frowned and said, "Take your own money." Wangshu remained steadfast and said, "But your hands must be healed." Zhou Jinsong twisted his eyebrows, pulled her back to the room, and handed her a military green bag. "I have money at the medical clinic," he said succinctly. "I can't spend women's money." Wangshu pushed open his bag and said, "But you are my husband. Who will I spend my money on if I don't give it to you?" Upon reflection, Zhou Jinsong found it very reasonable. But he's an old man, how can he rely on women? He handed the bag back to Wangshu and unconsciously increased his strength, saying, "If you want to hold it, then take it." Wangshu was pushed by him and stumbled towards the bed, as if he was about to hit the back of his head. "Oh no, hold back your strength again." Zhou Jinsong instinctively wanted to hold on to her, but his arm was a bit unstable and instead placed heavy pressure on her. The man's warm breath sprayed on her face, and she widened her eyes. The next second, the thin lips imprinted on her lips. Her face suddenly turned red, her mind went blank, and she unconsciously remembered that dream, feeling her heart beating rapidly. Zhou Jinsong also had a difficult time, as the warm and soft touch emanating from beneath him made him feel like there was a reaction somewhere. Reluctantly propping himself up, he saw the woman under him with red circles under her eyes, like a little rabbit. "Don't be afraid, I just want to pick you up. I don't want to do anything." He panicked and tightly pursed his lips as he stood up. "Did it hurt you? Why are you separating yourself from me so much? I'm already married to you, aren't I?" Wangshu spoke with a grievance, "Aren't you unwilling for me to be your wife?" Zhou Jinsong's Adam's apple moved again, feeling a burning sensation in his heart. He unconsciously lowered his voice and said, "I didn't mean that." "Then listen to me. According to the rules of our province of Rome, men have to listen to their wives' ears." Wangshu jumped up and hugged his intact arm, saying, "Follow me to the hospital, don't nag anymore." Zhou Jinsong felt the warmth on his arms, forcing himself to calm down and obediently followed Wangshu out. There is a considerable distance into the city, and one can only take a bus there. Unfortunately, the car was crowded and filled with cages filled with chickens and ducks. As soon as he got on the car, Wangshu frowned. As Zhou Jinsong looked at her, he thought she couldn't bear such a squeeze. He silently muttered that his wife was being delicate, but he still reached out to protect her in his arms to prevent her from being squeezed. Unexpectedly, Wangshu opened her arms and protected him like a hen protecting her cubs. "Be careful, hitting your injured shoulder will hurt." She gently instructed him, "You lean inside, don't get squeezed in, I'll block it for you." Zhou Jinsong was a bit stunned, and there were also many people from the same squad sitting in the car. He was also surprised to see this. Isn't it that Yi Jiqing is very unwilling to marry him? Looking at it now, they are hurting men very much. A villager joked with a smile, "Zhou you have good luck. My wife is so kind-hearted." Zhou Jinsong's face turned red and he couldn't speak for a while. At this moment, an disharmonious sound echoed from the back seat of the car. What would be heartbreaking? It's almost like deliberately causing trouble. Even though you know that Jin Song is injured, you still want to drag him into the city. Are you trying to persuade Jin Song to buy this and that for you? I don't know how to behave properly. I'm hooking up with Li Jianxiang, using my own money to support a wild man, and even sucking on Jin Song's blood. Do I have any face? The villagers around listened and their ears suddenly twitched. Oh, this is a great show to watch. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. You are unsettled by good intentions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. You are unsettled by good intentions. Wangshu turns his head and sees a woman sitting on the seat next to him wearing a floral skirt and a fried dough twists braid, who is dressed very exquisitely. This seems to be Shui Yanyan, a educated youth who went to the countryside with the original owner. She has always had a good impression of Zhou Jinsong, and naturally has various dislikes for her. Whenever there is a chance, she will be tripped up. Wangshu rubbed his palm and slapped him directly. The crisp and loud slap not only stunned Shui Yanyan, but also made the car silent. Zhou Jinsong tightened his eyebrows. Does his wife, who is as gentle as a little rabbit, still know how to take action? How dare you take action? Shui Yanyan gritted her teeth and glared at her angrily. I'm going to the police station to sue you. You're causing trouble. You deliberately damage our marital relationship, spread rumors about my innocence. I can't hit you. Did you see that I'm not clear with Li Jinxiang? Saying that I'm subsidizing a wild man, all the money I lent to Li Jianxiang was to him, with IOUs for every transaction. In your eyes, it has become such a dirty thing. She raised her chin and looked coldly at Shui Yanyan, saying, it's considered light to hit you. You spread rumors and caused trouble in front of my husband. It's good to not tear your mouth apart. Shui Yanyan's face looked even worse, but it really made her say that she couldn't say what kind of relationship Wangshu had with Li Jinxiang. It's also the original owner's conservatism. Even if I like Li Jinxiang, I haven't crossed the line. She gritted her teeth and said, so it's always true that you deliberately harassed Jin Kong. Even though you knew he was injured, you still had to bring him to squeeze the car and pretend. Wangshu sneered, today I took Jin Song to the city to see his hands at a large hospital. Is there any problem? Besides, I don't have a picky little sister. Law like you. Don't keep talking about Jin Song, brother. Who should I deal with? Zhou Jin Song is very familiar with you. Without waiting for Shui Yanyan to speak, Zhou Jin Song beside him spoke coldly, I'm not familiar. Besides my mother, I'm only familiar with one woman, my wife. Shui Yanyan choked on his words and her face turned red. The nearby villager envied and said, Jin Song's wife really hurts people. It would cost a lot of money to go to a big hospital, wouldn't it? Wangshu hugged Zhou Jinsong's fine arm and smiled sweetly, if you can cure us Jin Song, spend the money. Zhou Jinsong's heart was sweeter than honey as he listened to these words. Shui Yanyan listened to the praise of the villagers for Wangshu, and then looked at the arms tightly pressed against Zhou Jinsong and Wangshu, with a hint of jealousy in her eyes. She rolled her eyes and felt that Wangshu could not be willing to treat Zhou Jinsong's illness. It was mostly intentional and obedient. Are you going to the hospital? I happen to know a doctor at the hospital, why don't I go with you? She reached out to grab Zhou Jinsong's arm and enthusiastically said, why don't you come over here and squeeze with me? I was just talking nonsense, and I apologize to you. You really have enough tea. Do you want to take the opportunity to stick with her husband? Wangshu sneered and pulled him up directly. Jin Song, sit down. It's rare for someone to kindly offer you a seat. Zhou Jinsong looked expressionlessly at Shui Yanyan and said, you sit down, I hurt my arm and my leg is fine. Yi Wangshu pulled him over and sat down directly. Don't disappoint their kindness. It's really not possible. You can hold on to me. Zhou Jinsong's body stiffened, and he actually reached out to hold her and sit in his arms. Feeling the sturdy chest on his back, Yi Wangshu's face turned red again. Shui Yanyan is full of anger. This Yi Wangshu is really cheap. In broad daylight, seduce brother Jin Song here. Shameless. She completely forgot about her legal spouse. Even if no one was so bold at this time, hugging were not illegal. Yi Wangshu and Zhou Jinsong hung up and walked into the diagnosis and treatment room, but the doctor looked impatient and said, after work. Come back tomorrow. She couldn't help but frown and said, it's only this afternoon, you're off work. The doctor's face was full of displeasure as he was about to speak when Shui Yanyan, who had been following the couple all along, interjected and said, Uncle, this is my friend. Could you please show him your hands? Oh, it's Yan Yan. The doctor looked at Shui Yanyan and said arrogantly, okay, for the sake of being your friend, I'll take a look. Yi Wangshu couldn't help but roll his eyes and sat down with Zhou Jinsong. Unexpectedly, the doctor waved his hand after only one glance and said, it can't be cured. This arm is useless. Let's amputate it, otherwise it will necrosis and affect other parts. Yi Wangshu frowned instantly and said, he just had a bone fracture dislocation, and his muscles and nerves are fine. How could he possibly have to amputate if he can't be cured? The doctor couldn't bear to hear her words and said, are you so capable of coming? There's no way we can even go to the hospital in the capital. Oh. Yi Wangshu smiled and said, okay, if I'm cured, don't be a doctor either. Go raise pigs as soon as possible. There are already many patients pointing outside. Is it difficult for Dr. Shui to be even worse than a little girl? Tisk, with such a big temper, don't you just be a quack, right? But how old is that girl? Maybe she's just talking big. Okay. I'll let you treat it. The doctor listened to those discussions and couldn't bear to say, if you haven't been cured, apologize to me in the newspaper. You'll have to pay me for my reputation damage. Yi Wangshu directly felt out the stack of great unity and said, okay, it's a deal. Shui Yanyan looked disdainful upon seeing the situation, but deliberately put on a look of concern for Yi Wangshu. Stop making trouble, Yi Wangshu. You're just a high school student and haven't studied medicine. My uncle came back from the Capital Medical College. You're so restless, don't let Jin Song's hands be even worse. She looked shyly at Zhou Jinsong and said, Brother Jinsong, it's okay for you to have an amputation. I'm willing to take care of you for a lifetime. Zhou Jinsong frowned as he was about to speak, but Yi Wangshu said, my man is not your turn to take care of him, and he cannot be disabled. She fixed her gaze on Zhou Jinsong and said, husband, do you believe me? Zhou Jinsong's heart was filled with excitement. Dr. Shui next to him had a strange yin-yang airway and said, don't blame me for treating things. If you want me to clean up your mess, you have to beg me. Yi Wangshu snorted coldly and looked at Zhou Jinsong's arm with an X-ray machine, confirming that the situation was indeed as he had guessed, giving him confidence in his heart. Then, she grabbed his shoulder and forcefully broke it off. The sudden excruciating pain made Zhou Jinsong snort, his veins on the back of his hand exposed, and the cold sweat on his forehead brushed down as he lay down. Dr. Shui was stunned for a moment and looked disdainful. Do you still want to treat people? Just break their bones. Don't try to cripple them and mislead our hospital, right? Yi Wangshu. I knew you were restless and kind-hearted. You were clearly trying to harm me, Brother Jin Kong. Upon seeing this, Shui Yanyan screamed and wanted to step forward to stop Yi Wangshu, saying, you wicked woman should be sitting in the dormitory. She rushed forward, trying to push Yi Wangshu away. She is surrounded by sharp instruments, and if she is pushed down and hit, at least she will be seriously injured. Yi Wangshu furrowed his brows tightly, but instinctively thought to connect Zhou Jinsong's arm first to prevent him from getting injured again. As Shui Yanyan was about to push her onto the instrument, a slender hand reached out at a critical moment, firmly gripping Shui Yanyan's hands and throwing her away. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Unbelievable. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 6. Leakage and Settlement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Leakage and Settlement. Who else can I be if I'm not Yi Wangshu? Yi Wangshu calmed down and secretly worried that she could easily fall into trap. Zhou Jinsong frowned lightly, unsure of what to say for a moment, but he had an inexplicable feeling in his heart. The person in front of me is not the same as Yi Wangshu before. Li Jianxiang fell to the ground, his eyes fixed on this side. Seeing that the two had a dispute, Yi Wangshu felt that it was because of Zhou Jinsong that he treated him in this way, and his heart immediately came to pay attention. Shu, it's all because Zhou Jinsong is with you that you treat me like this, isn't it? Don't worry, as long as you're still willing, I'll definitely take you away. Li Jianxiang's eyes were filled with deep affection, which made Yi Wangshu feel nauseous for a while. With a fierce glare at Li Jianxiang, Yi Wangshu turned his head to look at Zhou Jinsong with a face full of grievances. Do you think you're still not their husband? Your wife has been teased so much, and you still ignore me like this. Do you? Don't you even consider me your wife? Yi Wangshu spoke in an aggrieved tone, and the last two tears burst into his eyes, hitting Zhou Jinsong's heart. Zhou Jinsong felt his heart skip a beat, and when he came to his senses, he had already stood up and walked to Li Jianxiang's side. Seeing Li Jianxiang with deep affection in his eyes, Zhou Jinsong felt nauseous and kicked him several meters away. Get away. If I see you harassing my wife again, I will definitely not let you go. Li Jianxiang felt pain while covering his stomach and moaning repeatedly. If he had never dared to confront Zhou Jinsong before, he would have been possessed and rushed forward when he saw Yi Wangshu. At this moment, Zhou Jinsong spoke harshly. Li Jianxiang wished he could put on his wings and fly away, so he naturally dared not stay in place to obstruct his eyes. He quickly covered his stomach and ran away. Seeing the person leave, Yi Wangshu finally breathed a sigh of relief. You haven't answered my question yet, you can't even eat shrimp, and why would you be captured as a high school student? Zhou Jinsong stared at Yi Wangshu with a gloomy gaze, as if trying to observe the difference between this person and Yi Wangshu. No matter how he looks, the person in front of him is no different from before. I'm really just a high school student, but you don't know who my parents are. They're worried about their daughter being bullied and specifically seek someone to teach them. Yi Wangshu glared at Zhou Jinsong, not at all fierce, only slowly feeling aggrieved. Yi Wangshu suddenly felt a slight itching in his wrist and lowered his eyes to see that he was really allergic. She immediately pretended to be angry, turned around, and with a movement of her mind, a box of allergy medicine was transferred from the space supermarket to her hand. I quickly took out a pill and stuffed it into my mouth, and the itching on my arm disappeared immediately. Watching Zhou Jinsong on the side, Yi Wangshu reached out to cover his mouth, feeling that the other person was crying, and immediately panicked. It's my fault, I shouldn't ask you. Don't cry, I'll let you beat and scold me. Don't cry, okay? Cry. Yi Wangshu looked at his hand and instantly understood that Zhou Jinsong had misunderstood. But if he turned around now, the other person would realize that he had not cried at all, and perhaps even thought he had deliberately deceived him. Yi Wangshu pursed his lips and rubbed his eyes with one hand, turning them red. Pinch your thighs hard with one hand. However, in an instant, his eyes were moist, and Yi Wangshu turned around. Don't cry, it's not even good looking anymore. Seeing Yi Wangshu's bright red eyes, Zhou Jinsong was filled with heartache and raised his hand to wipe away his tears, feeling anxious on his face. If you don't want to say it, just don't say it. Wangshu shook his head, recalling the past of the original owner in his mind. Fortunately, the parents of the original owner were indeed worried about being bullied and had someone teach her some tricks, but the original owner felt tired and did not study seriously. As for the crayfish, the original owner did have an allergy, but fortunately it wasn't severe. She took the medicine just now and had already suppressed the allergy. I'm actually allergic to eating river shrimp. I don't eat river shrimp on weekdays. As for crayfish, it's rare in daily life, I just suddenly became greedy. But look, I'm fine. Wangshu rolled up his sleeves and showed Zhou Jinsong his pure white arms, which had no red marks on them. So you have a shrimp allergy, is eating crayfish okay? Zhou Jinsong looked puzzled and tried to recall, but only had a blurry image in his mind. Perhaps it's really river shrimp, not lobster. Isn't this obvious? Do you still don't believe it? Or do you still think that I'm not Wangshu? Who else can I be if I'm not Wangshu? Wangshu frowned slightly and reached out to grab Zhou Jinsong's face and touch it on his own. In the martial arts novels I read before, there was a story about a human skin mask that can be changed. Come and touch it to see if you can peel off the skin of my face. His skin was smooth, and Zhou Jinsong swallowed his saliva and immediately put aside his hand. I believe you, I had a thought earlier. Let's go quickly. Otherwise, there won't be any seats in the car later. Don't think recklessly in the future. Be careful that they say you, a great hero, are still superstitious and suspect that your wife is fake. Wangshu felt a big stone fall from his heart and followed Zhou Jinsong to the bus. The bone dislocation at Zhou Jinsong's shoulder has been corrected by himself, and as long as he cultivates well, he can recover. The reliable recovery of the human body itself is too slow. Let's wait and see if there are suitable herbs to use when we go back. Oh. Wangshu, you really like which Li Jianxiang you like. You can't wait to look down in the car. A piercing sound sounded, and Wangshu raised his hand to look at Shui Yanyan standing beside him with a jealous expression on his face. When can you change your habit of spraying feces all over your mouth? I just look out the window at people. So you keep staring at me, shouldn't you like me? Wangshu, you rascal, how can you curse? When Shui Yanyan was in the hospital, she was embarrassed enough, and after Wangshu and the others left, she was scolded by her uncle for being so bloody. She didn't buy anything she was angry about, but as soon as she got in the car, she saw Wangshu sitting with Zhou Jinsong. She immediately became angry and looked for it in her heart. But she's not here to scold. You shouldn't be scolded for thinking about other people's husbands every day. Wangshu glared at Shui Yanyan and then leaned against Zhou Jinsong with a proud expression. Besides, what I just said is also true. You. Wangshu, you're shameless. You're actually leaning against brother Zhou. Yan. The young couple has a red notebook, so don't make a fuss about it. That's it. If you really want to find a man to marry in our village, Auntie will act as a matchmaker for you. A few aunties who had bought things early sat aside, had enough watching the play, and immediately pulled Shui Yanyan to their side to start talking about what they had or not. Zhou Jinsong glanced at Li Jianxiang, who was not far from the car, and his face immediately sank. What were you looking at just now? What can I see? I'm just lost in thought. I didn't even notice anything outside the car window. If I notice, I'll just stare at you and think. Otherwise, what else can I think? At this moment, Wangshu saw Li Jianxiang outside the window and felt his eyes burning. He quickly shifted his gaze to Zhou Jinsong. So what are you thinking? Of course, I was thinking about what herbs can help your injuries heal faster. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Finding Herbs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Finding Herbs. As soon as the two of them arrived home, Wangshu walked out. She was all focused on finding herbs quickly and left the door without leaving a message. Looking at Wangshu's figure, Zhou Jinsong furrowed slightly but did not stop. Since returning, Li Jianxiang has been following the two of them, and now he sees Wangshu walking out the door and following them directly. I found it, I didn't expect it to be so easy. Wangshu frowned slightly, feeling a little annoyed in his heart. She was originally worried that it would be difficult to find medicinal herbs, so she went up the mountain empty-handed. Who knew that medicinal herbs were not only easy to find, but also quite abundant? Li Jianxiang looked around and rushed out when he saw no one. Shu, you're afraid Zhou Jinsong might get angry when you hit me, right? You've always had me in your heart, haven't you? I really don't want Jinsong to get angry, but... Before Wangshu could finish speaking, Li Jianxiang rushed forward with a joyful expression on his face. I knew it. Shu, don't worry, I will treat you well. As long as you go with me to the Women's Federation to sue the Zhou family and say that you don't want to marry Zhou Jinsong, we can be together openly and honestly. Wangshu looked at Li Jianxiang with a crazy expression on his face, and hid to the side when he was about to be next to him. Li Jianxiang, listen carefully, I'll say it again. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Wangshu let out a deep breath. I only have a relationship with you as a creditor and debtor. If you repay me with my things as soon as possible, we won't have any relationship. Li Jianxiang didn't listen to such words. In his heart, he had already recognized that the things he had spent the whole night were his own, and he didn't use them anymore. Shu, those were all voluntarily given to me by you. You said you wanted to be with me for a lifetime, did you forget? Ha! You're just a scumbag who has no ability and needs women to survive. Can I have a crush on you? Li Jianxiang, don't force me to take action. Wangshu's eyes sank slightly. Li Jianxiang is really good, he can easily stir up his anger with just a few words. Shu, I am sincere to you. Li Jianxiang seemed to have completely forgotten the ferocity of Wangshu's beating on him, and now he relied on the fact that there was no one in private and directly started to undo his own buttons. Shu, as long as you become my person, you will understand my goodness. Wangshu's face became increasingly dark, and she put on a good posture. When Li Jianxiang approached, she used one move to depose the person. At this moment, a petite figure was clenching its fist and looking angrily at this side. Seeing Li Jianxiang about to take off his clothes, the shadow immediately ran away with legs crossed. Brother. Second brother. It's not good, it's not good. Zhou Xiaohong started shouting before entering the house, and only breathed a sigh of relief when she saw Zhou Jinsong. Second brother, my sister.in.law knows how to be a man in the mountains. Make it clear, what makes a man? Zhou Jinsong remained calm and stared at his younger sister. Zhou Xiaohong swallowed her saliva and took a deep breath. Second brother, you don't know that those two people are hugging each other. Li Jianxiang's little white face even unbuttoned and undressed. Is that right? Zhou Jinsong clenched his fists tightly, his face covered in darkness. Zhou Xiaohong nodded repeatedly, I just said that Wangshu is not a good person. Second brother, you still take good care of her and marry her. Didn't you pick up a green hat for yourself to wear? Zhou Jinsong's face became increasingly black, and Zhou Xiaohong's voice also became lower and lower. At this point, Wangshu had once again placed Li Jianxiang. If you bother me again, I'll beat you up every time I see you. You keep harassing me and tarnishing my reputation. I have Zhou Jinsong to support me, what do you have? Wangshu lowered his hand and Li Jianxiang's hand dislocated directly. Ah! It hurts. I dare not, I will never bother you again. I hope you can do what you say. Wangshu kicked Li Jianxiang and then started picking herbs. It was getting late, and Wangshu did not indulge in excessive consumption. After gathering enough herbs, he returned home. As soon as he got home, Wangshu felt the air pressure was extremely low. She processed the herbs and as soon as she returned to the room, she saw Zhou Jinsong with a black face. "Where did you go?" "I'll go pick herbs for you." "I told you in the car, did you forget?" Looking at Zhou Jinsong's dark face, my intuition told Wangshu that there might be a misunderstanding. Speaking of this, Li Jianxiang is really annoying. He even followed me into the mountain. Fortunately, I have learned martial arts, and with just his physique, I punched him a few times and he became honest. Really, Zhou Jinsong's tone was cold and clearly skeptical. "What am I deceiving you for?" Wangshu leaned over to Zhou Jinsong and looked at him pitifully. "Husband, my hands are hurting. Hurry up and let me know." "Ha, ha." Zhou Jinsong's face was slightly red, with a puzzled expression in his eyes. "Just blow it on me." Wangshu raised his hand and leaned towards Zhou Jinsong's mouth, his eyes urging him to hurry. Zhou Jinsong stiffened and blew twice, and Wangshu immediately raised a smile. "Wow! My husband is amazing. After blowing twice, I won't feel any pain anymore. It's almost time to order. Does my husband want to eat the food I made himself?" Wangshu dragged his face with both hands and looked at Zhou Jinsong with anticipation. Zhou Jinsong stiffened and nodded, while Wangshu immediately took the herbs to the kitchen. The Zhou family kitchen is not small, and because she has just married Zhou Jinsong, she also has a lot of ingredients. Wangshu first cooked the noodle soup and then began processing the ingredients. "Oh, the sun is shining in the west. Can Miss Qianjin still cook?" Li Xiaoxia leaned against the door and looked at Wangshu, who was busy in the kitchen with a disdainful expression. "If I hadn't cooked, I would have starved to death long ago. My sister-in-law came by a coincidence, and my dish is about to be cooked. The condiments are limited. Wangshu has only made a few simple dishes, and the most generous one is braised pork belly in brown sauce. What did he do? It smells so fragrant." Zhou Jinrui smelled the fragrance as soon as he stepped into the house. He didn't even return to the room, so he entered the hall. "Wife, when did you have this skill?" Zhou Jinrui's eyes lit up and looked at a large bowl of fresh braised pork belly. "How could I be willing to do this? Except for the wealthy lady from the second family, who would be willing to waste so much. It's both oil and sugar, making me feel heartbroken." Li Xiaoxia has always been jealous of her younger siblings, and whenever she finds an opportunity, she belittles Wangshu. "You're not right. This thing is meant to be eaten and used. If I eat it so well all at once, I can work more." Everyone sat down at the table, and Zhou Jinrui tasted the dishes one by one. "Wow! Even the chefs in the city can't match my younger siblings' skills. Try this meat, it's fat but not greasy. Besides, this potato is sour, spicy, and delicious. Little sister, you've always been greedy. Can you tell me what Big Brother said? Is your sister-in-law's craftsmanship good?" Zhou Xiaohong stopped picking vegetables and blushed as she turned her head to one side. "If everyone likes to eat, eat more." Wangshu smiled at everyone and then turned his gaze to Zhou Jinsong. Zhou Jinsong nodded and said, "It's delicious." As soon as everyone had finished their meal, there was a knock on the door. "Is there anyone in the Zhou family? Hurry up and get someone to help, someone has an accident on the mountain." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Something happened. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Something happened. Li Xiaoxia cursed as she opened the door, and the person knocking immediately said, "Sister-in-law, is brother Jean Roy at home? He's going to work tomorrow and he's already resting. You guys are." Li Xiaoxia looked at the person outside the door, her eyes full of light. She did hear it, these people were calling for help on the mountain. If something goes wrong with the dark lights, it will delay tomorrow's work. She can't let her family Jean Roy come over. Someone is in danger on the mountain, can you call out Jean Roy? This won't work. If it delays my man from starting work tomorrow, will you give us extra pay? Besides, if my man doesn't rest well and something unexpected happens while working, can you afford to delay? Li Xiaoxia was blocking the entrance, making people dare not even enter the courtyard to call out. By the way, my second uncle went to the big hospital today and saw that his arm is already healed. Why don't you call him? Everyone was overjoyed when they heard this, and the leader directly asked, are you serious? Is Brother Zhou's shoulder okay? Can I still deceive you? Li Xiaoxia pursed her lips and suppressed her dissatisfaction. Although Zhou Jinrui is the leader of the Zhou family, these soldiers and ruffians only recognize Zhou Jinsong as their elder brother. The other person is inside the room, go shout. Li Xiaoxia stepped aside and returned to the room with a dissatisfied expression on her face. Yi Wangshu finished washing the dishes, but did not see the figure of Zhou Jinsong. She was feeling a bit upset, but she still carried the medicine bowl back to the kitchen. If the medicine cools down, its efficacy will decrease, so she had to use a low flame to maintain the temperature and then focus her attention outside the door. After an unknown amount of time, the door was pushed open by someone. Yi Wangshu quickly extinguished the firewood and walked out of the kitchen. Unexpectedly, what caught the eye was that Zhou Jinsong was carried back by someone. What's going on? Why did you go out? Your shoulder looks like this. Looking at Zhou Jinsong, whose face was covered in cold sweat, Yi Wangshu immediately burst into tears. Sorry, sister. Law. We thought Big Brother's shoulders were fine, but who knew? Who knew that Big Brother just lifted a few stones and couldn't use his strength with his arms? Do you know that the bones on his shoulder are only healed and it will take several months to grow? Yi Wangshu grabbed Zhou Jinsong's intact arm and returned to the room, leaving a group of people looking at each other. What are you saying you're trying to do? You're not doing well yourself. What kind of stone are you lifting? You don't know what your shoulders are like now. You're afraid to force yourself while eating, and you. Don't cry, I was wrong. I won't dare anymore. Just forgive me this time, okay? Zhou Jinsong took the person who was crying out of breath into his arms, feeling a bit sour in his heart, as if a fire was about to ignite. Do you know that you have to take care of your body? Yi Wangshu glared at Zhou Jinsong and then got up from his arms. Quick! Let me see how my shoulders are doing. I was just sad and forgot to show you my shoulders. Yi Wangshu pursed his mouth and took off Zhou Jinsong's clothes. Looking at the clearly misaligned bones, Yi Wangshu felt tears filling his eyes again. She shook her head, stabilized her mind, and then raised her hand to retrieve the bone back into its original position. In an instant, Zhou Jinsong broke out in a cold sweat again. Why is it so painful this time? The injury has worsened, how could it not be painful? Can you shout for me? It won't hurt anymore. Yi Wangshu looked surprised at Zhou Jinsong's eyes, then leaned his lips against Zhou Jinsong's shoulder and blew lightly. Feeling the subtle breath, Zhou Jinsong swallowed his saliva and said, sure enough, it doesn't hurt when you exhale. You. Wangshu, it's great to have you. Smelling the fragrance of his nose, Zhou Jinsong placed a pair of big hands on Yi Wangshu's waist. Let's wait until you recover from your injury, Yi Wangshu exclaimed coquettishly, turning his head to meet a pair of surprised big eyes. I'm here to deliver medicine. Zhou Xiaohong blushed and placed the medicine bowl on the table, then turned around and ran away. The news that Zhou Jinsong's shoulders were almost healed quickly spread in the village, and the team members came upon hearing the news and called Zhou Jinsong back. Even though he still needs to cultivate for a while, what kind of team is this? It's just a case of flaunting his skin. In case he uses his shoulder recklessly again. When did your mouth break like this? Zhou's mother couldn't help but smile when she saw Yi Wangshu so concerned about her son. "Mother, aren't you worried about Jin Kong?" Yi Wangshu became more and more angry as she thought, but she had no choice. After all, as soon as the person spoke, Zhou Jinsong nodded and said she would return to the team. Jin Song's child has a deep understanding in his heart, so you can rest assured. Zhou's mother patted Yi Wangshu's shoulder and then put the food in the basket. "We need to send food to Jin Song at noon. Are you going or should I go?" "I'll go. I'll just go and see if he's following the doctor's advice." Watching Yi Wangshu so devoted to his son, I felt happy and thought that the medical advice he gave was from a city doctor. Leaving the courtyard door, Yi Wangshu lowered his eyes and looked at the food. Then he took out the painkillers he had already prepared and added them to the food. She knew that Zhou Jinsong would doubt the medicine when he saw it. After all, there were no effective painkillers in this era. But she felt sorry for Zhou Jinsong. Although he never mentioned any pain, as a doctor, Yi Wangshu couldn't possibly not know how much it would hurt. As soon as he stepped into the training ground, Yi Wangshu saw Zhou Jinsong in the crowd. Zhou Jinsong is the tallest and has the best physique among all people. The broad shoulders and abdominal muscles are covered in beads of sweat, which doesn't look sloppy at all, but rather tempting. This scene reminded Yi Wangshu of the previous dream full of ripples, and she blushed and froze in place. "Yo! Brother Zhou, turn around quickly. Sister-in-law, you look so silly. Ha ha ha. Brother Zhou and his sister-in-law are really a perfect match." A series of jokes brought Yi Wangshu back to her senses. She looked up at Zhou Jinsong, who was longing to walk on her side, and raised her arm. "Mom asked me to bring you food," she said. "There is a cafeteria in the army, so there's no need to run around." Zhou Jinsong smiled and finished the basket, his eyes fixed on Yi Wangshu. "Mom said, the food in the army is not abundant and not delicious, and now it's a special period where everyone brings food from home." Zhou Jinsong took the person to the cafeteria and found a place to sit down. "It's enough to eat." Zhou Jinsong watched Yi Wangshu arrange the dishes and suddenly felt that someone was also giving him a good feeling. "You just need to eat, where did all that talk come from?" Yi Wangshu directly stuffed a dish into Zhou Jinsong's mouth, his face full of concern. "Eat more, hurry up, you know." Zhou Jinsong chewed on the food in his mouth and nodded repeatedly. The painkillers were ground into powder and eventually had a taste. Yi Wangshu was afraid of being discovered by Zhou Jinsong, so he kept stuffing food into Zhou Jinsong to divert his attention. A meal was quickly finished, and Zhou Jinsong was in a great mood. "Let me take you around for a rest now." "Okay." The two were walking side by side when suddenly a white figure rushed towards them, looking anxiously at Zhou Jinsong. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Alarm Bell Masterpiece. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Alarm Bell Masterpiece. Jinsong, are you here for dinner? Coincidentally, I also want to eat, why don't we come together? Looking at the friendship that was about to overflow in the eyes of the woman in front of him, Yi Wangshu instantly sounded the alarm and directly took Zhou Jinsong's arm with one hand. "Husband, is this sister a relative's child?" Yi Shi looked at Zhou Jinsong with a curious expression and gently pressed her against his arm. Zhou Jinsong was completely unaware that the two of them were pointing their needles at Meimang. "This is Song Ruan, our playmates from childhood to adulthood. Ruan, this is your sister-in-law, Yi Wangshu. So it's like this. Ruan's younger sister needs to tell me about your Jinsong brother's childhood. Although we have been engaged since childhood, I really don't know what he looked like when he was a child." Yi Wangshu's smile was pure and kind, but there was a hint of provocation in his eyes. Song Ruan pursed her lips and looked at Yi Wangshu tightly pressing against Zhou Jinsong's arm, frowning in one place. "Why don't you know you're so heartbroken, woman? Brother Jinsong has a shoulder injury, and you're still sticking to him like this. What if brother Jinsong's injury worsens? No problem, Wangshu didn't exert any force. Zhou Jinsong smiled and took Yi Wangshu's hand, his tone gentle, and his eyes filled with tenderness. Looking at Zhou Jinsong's appearance, Song Ruan immediately felt a hint of jealousy in her heart, and her gaze towards Yi Wangshu became increasingly unfriendly. Ruan, we have already eaten. If you haven't eaten yet, go to the cafeteria as soon as possible. My husband said he wants to take me around here, so we won't delay your meal time. Yi Wangshu shook the tightly clenched hands of Song Ruan at Song Ruan, raised his eyes, and blinked at Zhou Jinsong. Husband, are you still busy later? Time is tight, so hurry up and take me around. Zhou Jinsong nodded and was about to take Yi Wangshu forward, but Song Ruan stopped him. Jinsong, you're not in a hurry to eat. I want to take a look at the injury on your shoulder first. Song Ruan blinked, tears in her eyes. These days, I've been worried about you. When I know you're back, I just want to see your injury. Can it be difficult, Ruan? Are you a military doctor in this army? Yi Wangshu frowned slightly and looked at Song Ruan with an unhappy expression on his face. Song Ruan smiled and nodded at Yi Wangshu. Although Ruan is not a military doctor, he knows some medical skills and has been working as a military doctor in the army. Song Ruan's face was full of confidence, and his gaze at Zhou Jinsong was also firm. Yi Wangshu looked back at Song Ruan, unwilling to be outdone, with a puzzled expression in his eyes. Is that right? Then why hasn't my husband been cured in this army? I took over his bones. That's because I'm not here. If I were there, where could I make Jinsong wait for so long? Jinsong, why don't you come with me to the medical room? Song Ruan looked up at Zhou Jinsong with a pleading expression in his eyes. Do you know that the most taboo thing about my husband's injury is to open the bandage at any time? Yi Wangshu's face clearly showed displeasure. She was not afraid of Song Ruan making things difficult for herself, but only Zhou Jinsong suffered when the gauze was opened and wrapped. At this moment, several soldiers dressed up also walked over. Isn't it just a matter of looking at the wound, can it shed flesh or not? Exactly. Dr. Song is the leader of our army, and she has saved many soldiers in danger. It's not something that can be compared to any cat or dog. You look like a fox seductive, and your skills in returning to your room are quite similar. What are you saying? As a soldier, that's how you insult and mock the military family. Zhou Jinsong looked coldly at the soldiers who were talking nonsense, his anger filled his eyes, causing their legs to tremble. Apologize. Yes, I'm sorry, it's us who speak recklessly and spray feces all over our mouths. Apologize to my wife. Zhou Jinsong had a dark face, and his low pressure seemed to condense into mist. A few people glanced at each other, then bowed to Yi Wangshu and said, I'm sorry. Be careful when you speak in the future. Yi Wangshu didn't pay much attention to the words of the few people. When she joined the hospital, she was often said, and there were even more unpleasant things to say. But she doesn't care if it's true, but she won't ignore it. After all, Yi Wangshu is not a soft persimmon who is easily beaten and scolded. My husband is really kind, thank you for standing up for me. Yi Wangshu raised a small face and looked at Zhou Jinsong, with a smile on his face, not a hint of sadness. I am your husband, it's my duty to help you. Zhou Jinsong pinched the small hand in his palm and then looked at Song Ruan. Ruan, your sister.in.law is right. I didn't unpack this gauze well, so I won't show you my shoulder injury. Jinsong, Song Ruan wanted to stop the two of them again, but Zhou Jinsong finished speaking and led Yi Wangshu away. She was so angry that she stomped her feet but had no choice but to turn around and enter the cafeteria. I didn't expect there to be so many people here. I thought there were only 20 or 30. Yi Wangshu looked at Zhou Jinsong's shoulder, feeling a bit low. I was the only one familiar with the mountain roads in the army, so they called me out that night. Most of the others were outsiders and unfamiliar with the mountains. This is not an excuse for you not to take care of yourself. Your shoulders can't work hard yet. If I find out that your injury is serious again, I won't spare you. Yi Wangshu pinched Zhou Jinsong's palm with a delicate expression on her face. Looking at Yi Wangshu like this, Zhou Jinsong nodded in a ghostly way and said, "How can't you spare me? If you make me angry, do you believe that I ran away with someone?" Yi Wangshu's words were harsh, even with a hint of desperation between his eyebrows and eyes. Upon hearing these words, Zhou Jinsong immediately thought of Li Jianxiang, feeling anxious and hugged Yi Wangshu tightly in his arms. "You have already married me, it's my wife. Don't think about running away with anyone. Hey! You have some reason, there are prerequisites. If you don't make me angry, I will naturally be your daughter.in.law obediently." Zhou Jinsong nodded, but refused to let go of his embrace, still firmly holding Yi Wangshu. Seeing someone looking over, Yi Wangshu's face turned red and he whispered to Zhou Jinsong to let go. "It's getting late, you should also go for training, and I have to go back." Yi Wangshu looked at Zhou Jinsong with a reluctant expression on his face, tiptoeing to kiss him on his face. "I'll wait for you to go home." As soon as these words fell, Yi Wangshu ran away with the basket in hand. As soon as Yi Wangshu arrived home, he put a small hoe in the basket and then went up the mountain. Zhou Xiaohong was meeting at the moment, and when she heard the commotion, she followed suit. Yi Wangshu first went to the location where he had dug herbs before, picked the herbs that Zhou Jinsong wanted to drink, and then walked deeper. Yi Wangshu's pace was light, and he was only focused on picking herbs when he didn't notice someone following him. Suddenly, he realized that the footsteps were not right. Worried that Li Jianxiang's servant had come over again, Yi Wangshu walked slowly towards the spacious area and turned around to find that it was his sister.in.law. "Xiaohong. What are you doing with me?" End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Taking Medicine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Taking Medicine. Sister-in-law, sister.in.law, I'm just curious about what you're doing outside. Zhou Xiaohong scratched her head awkwardly, avoiding Yi Wangshu's gaze. "The injury on your second brother's shoulder needs to be taken medicine. I'll go up the mountain to collect some herbs." Yi Wangshu didn't care about Zhou Xiaohong's discomfort. "If you're free, just follow me to collect herbs. The two of us can also collect more." "Sister-in-law, do you still know herbs?" Zhou Xiaohong looked at Yi Wangshu in surprise, and then remembered that Yi Wangshu had brought a large handful of herbs back last time. "But at that time, I didn't even know herbs, so I thought she was just picking them up to feed the chickens." Thinking of this, Zhou Xiaohong's face turned even redder. "Sorry, sister.in.law. I shouldn't have misunderstood you. It's okay, I know you're thinking about your second brother, and I happen to want someone to be with you." Yi Wangshu knew her sister.in.law was innocent, so she naturally wouldn't argue with her. "I learned about these herbs from books. If you want to learn, I can teach you." Zhou Xiaohong nodded and followed behind Yi Wangshu, occasionally pointing to the grass and asking if it was a herb. "I didn't expect so much wild grass to be able to cure diseases." Zhou Xiaohong's face was filled with joy, and she was still holding a few freshly pulled herbs in her hand. There is a truth to his existence in all things in the world, and there is still a lot we need to learn. "Sister-in-law, what you said is a bit difficult to understand, but it seems quite reasonable." Zhou Xiaohong scratched her head with embarrassment, feeling in her heart that her sister.in.law was also too elusive. "Shoo! There's something big ahead." Yi Wangshu's eyes lit up as he looked ahead. Zhou Xiaohong, who was following behind Yi Wangshu, immediately covered her mouth and her eyes were filled with fear upon hearing these words. "Big thing. Is it difficult to understand what kind of beast it is?" Is it a tiger or a wolf? Yi Wangshu didn't know that Zhou Xiaohong was so scared that she was about to faint. She lowered her steps and walked forward, then took out a small hoe and carefully dug the soil. Zhou Xiaohong was stunned by Yi Wangshu's actions, and only when Yi Wangshu stood up did she approach. Sister-in-law, why are you digging up this tree root? Why are you so foolish, child? What tree's roots grow alone? At this time, wild mountain ginseng is shorter in age, but it can also buy a lot of money. Yi Wangshu carefully wrapped the wild ginseng in a large leaf. With this unexpected joy, she can go back first. Wild ginseng. Zhou Xiaohong covered her mouth and opened her eyes wide. Sister-in-law, is this what you're talking about? Well, I'm not sure how much it can sell. But just this one is worth more than this bunch of herbs. Yi Wangshu patted Zhou Xiaohong's shoulder. All right, don't be surprised, let's go back quickly. Sister-in-law, I know wild ginseng. It can regulate vitality and nourish the lungs, right? How do you know the efficacy of wild ginseng? Yi Wangshu's eyes flashed with curiosity. Sister-in-law, my mother's health is not good. I saw a doctor before saying that we need to use wild ginseng for recuperation in order to recover. Zhou Xiaohong pursed her lips and looked at Yi Wangshu with embarrassment. Sister-in-law, can you bring this wild ginseng to my mother's health for recuperation? Watching Zhou Xiaohong blush, Yi Wangshu nodded and said, I said selling it is also for the purpose of supporting household expenses. Since my mother-in-law can use it, she naturally won't sell it. Really? Zhou Xiaohong's heart was instantly filled with surprise. She clenched her hands and looked at Yi Wangshu with a surprised expression. Sister-in-law, you are really great. All right, let's hurry home. Zhou Xiaohong couldn't keep things hidden, so as soon as she got home, she shouted to dig wild ginseng. Xiaohong, did you and your sister-in-law really dig wild mountain ginseng? Zhou's mother looked at Yi Wangshu with a surprised expression on her face, looking at her basket and feeling much more energized. Mom, it was my sister-in-law who dug it up, and I followed her. Zhou Xiaohong scratched her head awkwardly, then took Zhou's mother's arm and said, Mom, sister-in-law said, I'll use this wild ginseng to take care of your body. Wild mountain ginseng. Wild mountain ginseng can be sold for a lot of money. Li Xiaoxia listened to the voice and walked out, seeing that she was carrying a basket before reaching out to ask for it. Yi Wangshu frowned slightly and dodged the hand extended by Li Xiaoxia. I was originally planning to sell money, but Xiaohong said that my mother-in-law's health is not good, so I can use this wild ginseng for recuperation. Yi Wangshu took the wild ginseng out of the basket and handed it to Zhou's mother. Since I need it, it's important for my mother to use it. She's an old woman with half a body buried in the ground, how could she use such a precious object? Li Xiaoxia felt anxious when she heard Yi Wangshu's words, and reached out to grab the wild ginseng. At this moment, before Zhou's mother could pick it up, Yi Wangshu turned around and looked at Li Xiaoxia with an unhappy expression on her face. Sister-in-law, I dug up this wild ginseng. I said, if you use it, you can use it. If you want to sell it, you can go to the mountain and dig it yourself. Yi Wangshu, how could you be so embarrassed to say such a thing? The family has run out of money to marry you, and so many people in the family don't have to pay for food and drink. There's finally something to make money from, how could you waste it like this? Li Xiaoxia refused to let go, but Yi Wangshu was too lazy to talk to her. At this moment, Zhou's mother frowned and returned to the room. When she came out, she held a piece of indigo blue old cloth in her hand. I saw Zhou's mother trembling as she unfolded the blue cloth, inside which lay 2 silver bracelets and a pair of earrings. This is my dowry at the bottom of the box, this wild ginseng. I just bought it from my second wife's house. Zhou's mother let out a long sigh, looking at the jewelry in her hand with reluctant eyes, as if recalling something. Yi Wangshu naturally wouldn't want this jewelry. Seeing Li Xiaoxia staring intently at the jewelry in her mother-in-law's hand, she quickly stepped forward and grabbed Zhou's hand. Mother, I dug this wild ginseng, so I can make my own decision. If I say I'll use it for you, I'll give it to you. Keep this jewelry well and leave it for my little sister. Yi Wangshu held Zhou's mother's hand and took the opportunity to support her pulse. Don't be so hypocritical here, just say no. What are you doing with such a stinky face? I think you just want it. Li Xiaoxia stared at the hand they held, but her heart was filled with thoughts. She has been married to the Zhou family for so long, and it's the first time she knows that her mother-in-law has so many treasures hidden in her hands. Yi Wangshu was too lazy to talk to Li Xiaoxia, as she had just been startled by Zhou's mother's pulse. Zhou's mother's pulse was very thin, and she felt it for a long time before daring to conclude that Zhou's mother was suffering from too much physical deficiency. Mother, hurry up and put away your things. Yi Wangshu patted Zhou's mother's hand and then said, I have read 2 medical books and know how to maximize the efficacy of wild ginseng. I will go and make soup for you now. Hey. Alright. It's a blessing for our family that my second wife married you. Zhou's mother wrapped her jewelry in indigo blue cloth and looked at Yi Wangshu's figure, her eyes moist. She originally thought that Yi Wangshu was difficult to get along with, and had even considered asking her son to give up his engagement before. Now that Yi Wangshu is like this, her heart is at ease. End of this chapter.